So, we're finally here. Reaching far across these new frontiers, you could say. After a lengthy 5-year wait, a longer wait than I think we've ever had for any mainline Sonic game, the newly released Sonic Frontiers is finally out. The only comparison I could even think of was the gap between Sonic and Knuckles versus Sonic Adventure. Dude, okay, realize that these two games are just as far apart as Forces and Frontiers. Isn't that crazy to think about? Okay, we're not even a paragraph in and I'm already getting sidetracked. This is a big video, fair word of warning. I've had a lot of thoughts building for these past few years about the state of Sonic and what I've been expecting from this game, so be prepared, this is going to be a long video. I don't think I've seen a Sonic release in forever that's been as mixed as Frontiers. I see some folks saying it's the best Sonic game ever, while others are claiming it to be one of the worst. For what SEGA was expecting to be the biggest and most successful Sonic release ever that is going to set the series up for the next decade of games, and to have Sonic Team be revered as a AAA studio in the eyes of the public again, it's safe to say the reception could have been better. Not that it's bad, but it's very inconsistent to say the least. Which boat do I fall into? Well, I wouldn't say it's my favorite Sonic game. Top 5? No. Top 10? Nah, I don't think so. But you see, I had to think about that one. So clearly there's something here that I think works. Which I do. I enjoyed my time with Frontiers and had a lot of fun with it. But every time I try to describe this to someone who asks me about it, all I can seem to think about is what could have been done better. How it all doesn't come together very well, but I enjoyed it despite that. Which confuses the hell out of me. And so I want to cover all my grinds and talk about each and every aspect of Sonic Frontiers. What works, what doesn't, and overall what I think hurt this game the most with general audiences looking in. That being the unimaginable hype. That this was going to be the Sonic game to end all Sonic games, and it's going to get 10s across the board. Is it too late to say that reviews don't matter? Before we begin, I gotta mention that I was given a review copy for this game, which is how I've managed to get such a lengthy video out so soon after its release. I've had it for quite a bit now, which has allowed me to do multiple playthroughs and beat it 100%. I wasn't even expecting to get it early. I was literally just pulling in my new Sonic the Fighters arcade cabinet when I was randomly messaged on Discord with a Steam key. I mean, hey, I'm not complaining. So here we go. Let's get started with the video. Sonic Frontiers. Expectations versus reality. Or Sonic Frontiers and the State of Sonic, or Sonic Frontiers, the problem with hype, whatever goddamn title I settle on. I think every single person out there had a right to be so skeptical about Sonic Frontiers before its release. Sonic Team and SEGA have proven time and time again that your trust in them should not be a guarantee. Throughout the 2000s, we were consistently getting multiple releases every year that varied wildly in quality. Same year we got Shadow the Hedgehog, we got Sonic Rush. Same year we got Sonic Unleashed, we got Rider Zero Gravity and Chronicles. Things were all over the place, and so leading into the 2010s, SEGA realized things needed to change, and let it be known that they were focusing on quality over quantity. Then they ruined everyone's trust on that with the next release, and once again told us that they were focusing on quality over quantity.
The mouse.
See, SEGA had fallen into a pattern where they tell us they're doing something that isn't reflected in the actual games. And so when I'm waiting 5 years for a game where it's completely up in the air whether or not it'll be good, I end up longing for the days where shit is constantly being flung at the wall. Because hey, eventually some of them stuck. With Frontiers though, you could really tell SEGA had a lot riding on this. They allowed Sonic Team to delay it further despite knowing it would cost them more money. They specifically said they're targeting high reviews, as opposed to not, I guess. And most importantly, that they wanted to lay the groundwork for the next decade of Sonic, much like Adventure did back in 1998. Judging by their current release schedule of one game every 5 years, the next decade of Sonic is looking to have one more mainline release, but hey, who am I to question the almighty Sonic Team? From my buddy Splash Dash's videos, it was apparent that I didn't hold much hope in Frontiers from when it was first revealed. It seemed to be plagued with fundamental issues that couldn't simply be fixed in the few months before release. The abysmal pop-in, the barren world, and a Sonic that just didn't look all that fun to control. I think this just may have been the most painful Sonic game cycle for me personally, mainly because of how much I was burnt from Forces. Luckily, that game was being shown off when I had just started my YouTube channel, so you can see the hopes of a 15-year-old Mark be slowly crushed in real time. I was defending that shit hard until it came out, praying that any glaring issue would be fixed upon release. But when I realized that, yeah, the game came out with the exact same fucking issues, I was not gonna cut Frontiers any slack. And after getting Vietnam War flashbacks, from seeing fans give SEGA the pass and using the exact same excuses of, Well, it'll be fixed when the game comes out. This is just an alpha version. I was not having it. It's strange, because the same people who said pointing out stuff like the broken animations wasn't necessary and was nitpicking became the exact same folks to later praise Sega for fixing them. That's weird. I wonder why Sega went back and tweaked them if there was such a non-issue. Really makes you think. Anyway, sorry for the rant, I'm aware I actually have to talk about the game first. All that stuff about the state of the Sonic fanbase and their obsession with hype culture can be saved for the end of the video. For now, I'm going to give my thoughts on the entirety of Frontiers, from the story to the gameplay, presentation, and music, letting you know exactly where I stand and if I think it was worthy of the 5-year wait. Spoilers, I don't. But that doesn't mean the game is bad at all. Quite the contrary. I think the story is one of the major things people were interested in with Frontiers. For over a decade now, the stories of these games have been pitiful, ranging from almost non-existent like Generations, to laughably poor like Enforces. The main thing I had been wanting from a modern Sonic story was a sense of pride, an earnestness that we hadn't really seen since Sonic Unleashed, where the game was able to take these characters seriously and not feel the need to jangle keys in front of your face every 10 seconds with lame jokes. Or have cutscenes where characters just spout whatever exposition was needed to get you to the next area as quickly as possible, so that critics couldn't bitch about Sonic and Friends being annoying. It's really sad to see just how much hate was given towards the stories of the 2000 Sonic games, which, don't get me wrong, weren't perfect. But I think that was mostly down to the execution. But all reviewers could take from this was, Sonic shouldn't take itself seriously, and these stories are only bad because they're serious. I'm happy to see that the influence that criticism clearly had over Sega, given the subsequent games, appeared to be gone with Frontiers. It seemed like Sonic Team were aiming for a story that harkened back to the days where Sonic wasn't afraid to have scope and be cool instead of funny. They were unusually proud of it, putting a lot of focus on this mystery element, not even officially showing any cutscenes in full, because they wanted the player to go in blind and uncover the secrets of the Starfall Islands themselves. What further had people excited was that they hired Sonic veteran Ian Flynn to write the English translation. For anyone unaware, he's a genuine Sonic fan who got a job writing the Archie comics back in 2006, being one of the folks responsible for getting that mess back on track. And has since gone on to continue his work on the new IDW comics, which have been solid, and even wrote 2 episodes of the Sonic Boom TV show, which I know of because I'm one of the 4 people out there who's seen every single episode of that thing and not just the few repeated meta clips people post on Twitter. But him writing an official game? Hell, anything's better than the goobers they were previously hiring. But to see this level of understanding of what fans were looking for in a writer, you know, somebody who actually cared about Sonic? Damn, Sega. Okay, you've piqued my interest. So, does Sonic Frontiers have the best and most epicest story of any Sonic game? No. First of all, I want to state my biggest positive when it comes to the story before getting into what I didn't like so much, as well as the finer details. But the biggest surprise that I was delighted to see is how instead of simply adding to the lore such as Lost World and Forces, Frontiers instead chooses to expand the already existing elements, building off previous games and using that to tell their own tale, with the big thing answered here being, where do the Chaos Emeralds come from? Would be easy to say, who cares, you know, they're just video game collectibles. But I really appreciate how they have the balls to try and set some sort of official backstory behind them, which fits in with the rest of the series perfectly, given how much it pays respect to the other games, whereas the previous recent entries seem to act like none of them ever happened. Saying all of this though, Sonic Frontiers' story has a plethora of issues from poor presentation to awkward pacing, and it's not bad per se, don't get me wrong. If anything, it's the best any Sonic story has been since Sonic Unleashed, I'd say. And I think the dialogue itself is some of the greatest we've seen from any Sonic game out there. But the way the story is presented here only leaves me wanting more, as the big mystery the entire marketing campaign was revolved around wasn't all that intriguing to me. Which is a shame because the idea is wonderful, I love it. But I think maybe a tad more could have been done to make it all feel a bit more rewarding. Again, I want to stress that it's not the story itself I have a problem with, it's all about the way it was executed. But I'll give plenty of praise where it's due, and believe me, there's plenty of praise to be given. The game opens with us seeing Eggman approaching these strange ruins, before using this new device he's created to upload an AI to whatever this is. This was all for the purpose of activating it so we can find out the secrets of the Ancients. Which had me confused as fuck as to why they'd choose a name like that, because Sonic Boom used that exact same name for their long-lost civilization. But hey, I'll give Frontiers this, unlike Boom we actually get to see what they were. Once they're activated, Eggman's AI turns on a protective initiative, and forces him into this strange place known as cyberspace, whom we later learn can take on a physical form, being Siege. And during all of this, Sonic, Tails, and Amy are approaching the Starfall Islands to track down the Chaos Emeralds. They're also thrown into this place. Oh yeah, Knuckles is also trapped there, but you can only see how that happened by watching a YouTube video. It's wonderfully animated and all, but I sure do miss when story stuff like this wasn't something that I had to go out of my way to find out. From here, Sonic manages to escape cyberspace, where a faceless voice in the sky lets him know that he needs to find the Chaos Emeralds and destroy the Titans in order to tear down the walls between real life and cyberspace, freeing his friends. And from there, he goes on his merry way to do just that. At this point, the story becomes very formulaic. Again, not in what's actually happening in said story, but instead in how it's piddled out to us over the course of the game. Each island, except for one, I'll get to that, has the exact same structure. You find one of your friends trapped in cyberspace, you rescue them, they claim they're gonna help you find the emeralds, but let's be real, they don't do shit, and then you proceed to do 3 or 4 story missions with them that revolve around the new Chow-like creatures introduced, the Coco. Each of the Coco that our characters pair alongside reflects them in some way. Amy's is looking for their lost love, Knuckles is our soldiers trying to protect their civilization, and Tails is a sidekick who's lost their hero. I think this is very smart, as it further allows us to see these characters shine through how they relate to their respective Coco, how it brings out their own struggles and insecurities. But much more emphasis is being put on the Ancients and what happened to them. Around halfway through the island, you get to see a cutscene where Sonic and Fran get a flashback of what happened all those years ago, with each making it clearer and clearer that they were wiped out by something. But other than those single cutscenes, that's all we get for the first 3 islands. The mystery revolves around each character asking the same 4 or 5 questions over and over again, giving their own take on it. What was the Ancients' technology for? What did they want with the Chaos Emeralds? But all of this is only done through optional story stuff, where you walk up to the character at random parts of the island and watch them discuss this, which in some ways I understand. There are a lot of people who genuinely don't want that much story in Sonic, and so to simply have it there as an option I think is a great idea. But the problems start to form when you realize this is all just assumptions. By the final island, the optional story dialogue of Sage just tells you what everything was for. They spell it out for you. And you don't have to have heard any of the other optional character stuff to watch these scenes. So I have to wonder where's the fun in this mystery if I can just skip all the character stuff until the last island, because by that point I know I'm just going to be given the truth. It doesn't feel like I'm uncovering these mysteries at all, and instead waiting for the game to finally tell me what's going on, which doesn't make for an interesting way to present your story, especially when what's here really isn't that deep. In Island 4, we get the big info dump. It's basically just one big exposition cutscene that was split into 6 parts and dribbled out to you throughout the island, where we learn the reality behind what really happened on the Starfall Islands. So there was an ancient civilization from another planet to use the Chaos Emeralds for their power, but when it was blown up by this strange being, they were forced to escape, being drawn to Earth by the Master Emerald. Earth or Mobius or whatever the fuck they want to call it, I don't know if they've backtracked on that yet, where they use the emeralds to power their new defenses, such as the Titans, which they quickly have to use, as this thing has come for their new home too, in which all the Ancients were wiped out, leaving their history behind in these things they created called cyberspace. So when Eggman activated it in the first cutscene, everything was turned back online, with the voice in the sky being revealed to have been the planet-destroying entity itself, wanting Sonic to tear down the walls between cyberspace in order for it to escape. It's done in a similar way to Sonic Adventure, where you're interrupted now and again to get glimpses of what happened in the past, how chaos came to be and what wiped out the echidnas, but at least there, the structure of every character having their own standalone story allowed it to be that extra thing that pays off when you select the final story, which focuses solely on that. But Sonic and Tails just wanted to defeat Eggman, Knuckles wanted to restore the Master Emerald, Big wanted Froggy. Again, it was all extra stuff that later comes together, and so I can't help but look at Frontier's story like it isn't an incredibly basic idea that's stretched out as much as possible for the purpose of having a big mystery angle in the marketing. What doesn't help either is that we have a whole other island to explore after this, and so we go from its slowly drip-feeding story to us, to suddenly shotgunning it all at once, to then once again slowly strutting along to the endgame, occasionally talking to Sage to clarify what we had just seen in the previous island. And Sage knew all this stuff the whole time. When she was uploaded to cyberspace at the start, she learnt about all their history, so there's an infuriating amount of cutscenes that just consist of, hey, this is all pointless, you need to leave or you're gonna die. Why? Why the fuck would I tell you, asshole? Why say anything then? Sonic collects all the Chaos Emeralds, defeats the last of the Titans, and Sage sacrifices herself to destroy the big entity, creatively called The End. And so Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy go off into the sunset, Eggman mourning the death of his daughter. Wait, what? Can I just say, that shit came out of nowhere. Eggman suddenly treating Siege as though she were his child, and Siege calling him father. There are hints of Siege's affection for him throughout the cutscenes, mainly being when they cut from the Sonic stuff to show what Eggman is up to in cyberspace, which 9 times out of 10 consists of, well, floating around and doing nothing. But Siege seems excited about the idea of meeting Orbot and Cubot, her brothers, and even has a heartfelt flashback montage of their time together, paired with humming babies in the background. I liked all that stuff, but Eggman caring for her so much to the point of considering her a child comes off completely out of nowhere. Unless you went and got the 25 or so voice memos that are only available to purchase in the optional Big's Fishing minigame. Great! The game wants to have its cake and eat it too. We don't really see him grow attached to her in the cutscenes, but the ending acts like it's obvious that you'd know this. If you didn't listen to these like me in my initial playthrough, this shit completely comes out of nowhere. And I liked those memos. It's nice to see him compare her to Maria. Those do a wonderful job at showing why and how he begins to care for Siege, but I still think some of that should have been reflected in the cutscenes. I think maybe there should have been more of an attempt to change up the story depending on what you do in the islands. If I don't get the memos to see their bond grow, don't show me the ending shot of Eggman looking out to the sky mourning her death and calling her his daughter. Make it so I have to actually do something to inspire the change in Sonic's friends that they talk about at the end. Therefore, if I choose not to do that, the ending reflects how that wasn't the path I chose. I mean, at the very least, when I pass that island, don't have it so I can still go back and see that optional dialogue, because at that point, I go back to have Tails questioning to Sonic whether or not he's a burden, after I had already seen him get over that in the story. Extra polish like that can go a long way in making you feel more immersed in this world, and makes me want to engage more with your extra story stuff, instead of knowing I could ignore it all and still get the same outcome. And those memos do highlight an issue I have with Ian Flynn's writing, which for the most part is stellar, but I'll get into that in a bit. To conclude in this stuff, I'll say for sure that Siege has been the strongest villain from any Sonic game since, well, I want to say Shadow in Adventure 2. She's nowhere near on that level, but the way they went about her was something I really enjoyed. Such as us actually getting to see how she takes in Sonic's conversations with his buddies, becoming sad that she knows he's gonna eventually die after getting so corrupted from all the cyber energy he's taking in. It sure is a good thing that plot point just goes nowhere. By the time he's fully corrupted, they take care of it within that same cutscene, by having his friends go back into the safe, harmless cyberspace to bring him back. Yeah, sure, that ups the stakes. Remember when people thought this was hyping up a new super form? It's like in Sonic 06. Remember when he dies there, and you had to play a really hard level where you use each of the characters running through the literal end of the world to save his life? How about a cutscene where they hold hands and bring him back to a bright grassy field? That's just as memorable. I think where the game really shines isn't when it comes to the Ancients, but instead how Sonic interacts with his friends throughout the adventure. See, instead of them simply being there, like in all the other recent Sonic games, like I touched on before, each of them are given a mini-arc that starts and ends throughout Sonic's journey to their respective island. Amy becomes distraught after finding out that her Coco was immediately killed after reuniting with their lost love. Knuckles watches the Ancients get wiped out, which causes him to reflect on the fact that he's the last of his kind, and Tails gets insecure about whether or not he's a burden, always relying on Sonic. That one was definitely a response to how much criticism his character's been getting in recent times for only seeming to have degraded in terms of confidence over the years. They even call attention to it using what happened with Infinite and Sonic Forces. But all of these are a joy to watch, only topped off with the amazing dialogue that reminds me why I liked these characters in the first place. Sonic and Knuckles especially, there's fucking something going on between those two. I wish I could focus on that, but my attention is more so being drawn to how awful his new voice actor is. Nothing against the guy or whatever, but I personally hate his performance. Remember when Knuckles sounded actually kinda gruff and cool?
So what's next for you, Rouge? Off again to find those jewels you love so much?
Yeah, wouldn't you much prefer Surfer Bro Knuckles? Seriously, he sounds like bloody totally Kyle.
Where am I? This isn't my island. Is this another one of your tricks, Eggman? Show yourself!
No, it's not perfect. Because of the fact that these arcs are playing second fiddle to the ancient stuff going on, it means that not a ton of time can be devoted to showing the character's progression. Like, each of them is solved through a single conversation with Sonic, and it feels a bit unearned at times. Like when he tells Knuckles to just go out more. Like, yes, Sonic, that sure would be easy considering Knuckles has no serious responsibilities he has to do. But I love the way they tied it into previous games, referencing Adventure, Lost World, Forces. You can tell Sonic Team are making a genuine effort here to make this all feel like one timeline, even canonizing the classic Sonic games after Forces put that up in the air. Saying that, if there were one thing I started to notice as I kept playing, it's that Ian Flynn seems a little too trigger-happy on the name-dropping, which comes off as dangling keys in front of a Sonic fan's face when it serves no real purpose, and just feels like referencing for the sake of referencing. It works in most cases. Sonic using previous examples of Tails rescuing him to build his confidence, Siege trying to justify teaming up with Sonic to Eggman, directly referring to how it worked back on the Ark and against Neo Metal Sonic and Heroes, mentioning to Cal to Knuckles to point out the similarities between their current flashbacks to the Ancients' War, who themselves are directly building off Chaos from Sonic Adventure. But then there are times where Sonic is talking to Amy and is like, "I'll be back before you can do a fortune reading. Amy does that. That's a reference. Did you realize that?" He's talking to Tails all like, "Whoa, that beam must be just as powerful as the one back on the egg carrier from Sonic Adventure." And Tails is all like, "Well, I don't know, Sonic, that seems more akin to the combobulator on the Space Colony Ark, if you ask me. That's from Sonic Adventure 2. And at a certain point, the novelty of it wears off and feels a little cheap. Don't get me wrong, guys, I'm a Sonic fan too. There is a small part of me that gets a slight dopamine rush every time I see them reference 2005's Shadow the Hedgehog. And I was stunned when they confirmed the existence of Tangle the Lemur and Styx the Badger in the main universe, characters who've only been seen in spin-off material. But there are a couple moments where it feels a little tacked on.
Parts of this island are really lovely. I should bring Cream here sometime. I bet Tangle would love climbing around these ruins. That is some heavy firepower. Omega would be jealous. I could probably call Yacker all the way on Planet Wisp. Bet Rouge, wonder what Jet's up to.
This looks like an all-nighter at Richard Simmons' house.
At this point, I wouldn't mind Shadow lending me a hand.
Remember when I...
Kinda reminds me of where we found Babylon Garden.
The Eggman memos are especially guilty of this. These things are chocked full of references to the Babylon Rogues, to the Black Arms, even to Dodonpa from Team Sonic Racing. Remember Dodonpa? I don't. But again, that's just a minor complaint, and ultimately I'd take acknowledging its history over not at all. But maybe just calm it down next time, you know? Still though, this is basically an incredibly long-winded way of saying the story for Frontiers has been the best we've seen in a long time. But it's not without its issues, that I think all comes down to how heavily SEGA wanted to lean into a specific marketing style, being uncovering a big epic mystery. However, in the game this wasn't done in the best way due to its way of giving you information. I think maybe if the islands were longer or just structured in a different way, a lot more emphasis should have been put on the relationship between Sonic and friends, considering it's the big thing they build up to by the end. But I'm aware that's not what a majority of people are curious about with this game. They wanted to know how this shit played. The trailers all presented us with Sonic roaming around an empty open world, which made it hard to imagine you doing anything substantial here. With Sonic Team ensuring us this would all make sense once you sit down and actually play it. And so is this really the best Sonic has ever been in 3D, to the point where it feels like it earns the title of Evolution? Does it make me feel excited for the next decade of Sonic? Well, if I had a nickel for every issue in Sonic Frontiers gameplay, I wouldn't have to make YouTube videos for a living. Yet, there's a yet, I still had a lot of fun, and I'm the most hopeful I've been towards the series in a long time. Throughout its runtime, Sonic Frontiers follows a very basic formula for how you're going to get through each of the 4/5 Starfall Islands. Run around open zones to collect portal gears, use portal gears to open cyberspace stages, play cyberspace stages to collect vault keys, and collect vault keys to obtain the Chaos Emeralds and fight the boss at the end. The open zone gameplay and cyberspace levels are very different, so for the purpose of making this more coherent, I'm going to focus on each individually, starting with the main chunk of it, the open zone. An open-world Sonic game is something I've been longing for forever. I absolutely love the more linear stages of Unleashed and Generations, and I've played them endlessly over the years. Seriously, I have almost 250 hours logged in Generations on Steam alone. But something that always happened when I was a kid was finding myself trying to break it. Trying to get to those cool background locations that just wasn't possible. With a character as fast and athletic as Sonic, there's just something about him that makes you want to run around a big open space. And it finally seemed like SEGA were going to attempt this. And in the end, I met with an experience where I'm more disappointed by the missed opportunities, rather than what they actually went with. First of all, can I just say the first hour or so of this game is terribly weak. It drops you into a tutorial where you're running down a linear path that slowly teaches you all Sonic's mechanics that you could just as easily learn through playing the game. Thankfully, there's a way in the options menu to turn off notifications and stuff, but it doesn't prevent all of them. Not to mention, this tutorial segment is mandatory each and every time you play the game. Hell, every time you return to this island at any point in your story, you're dropped back to the beginning of this, forcing you to have to go through it again. I would have much preferred an option to let you spawn where the land begins to open up, because when it does, I think is when Sonic Frontiers gameplay really starts to shine. I saw a lot of complaints about this game being too similar to Breath of the Wild, which I don't exactly agree with. A much more fitting comparison would actually be Mario Odyssey, as these open zones are treated as nothing more than large playgrounds for Sonic to run around in, finding quick little mini challenges sprinkled throughout that help you get closer to where you go. There's quite a bit to do here, but not all of it is necessary to progress through the story. Really, the only thing the game wants from you is the keys. How you get them is up to you. They can be found in cyberspace or by fishing with Big, or sometimes they're just laying around in the open world. So really, all of the cyberspace stages can be considered optional. You don't have to do any of the missions that throw at you, or even engage in combat, which is a feature that I think is very clever in letting you bypass elements you may find annoying or not fun. But if you do decide to complete them, your experience is made much more leisurely, with them each upgrading Sonic or your map in a way that makes progressing more easier. The way I played was basically doing whatever I could in that moment. The emeralds are all spread out well, so on my way to collect certain ones I'd naturally just find myself getting sidetracked by other missions and such. And because of that, where I'm always finding myself getting flung in different directions for rewards, I was glad to see that I never struggled really with needing to grind for collectibles. The open zones are jam-packed with little linear dash panels and rings that send you off into fast-paced set pieces that usually fling you off into the air to collect memory tokens, which are used to allow you to speak to your friends or siege. And they're also short and basic, more often than not playing themselves the majority of the time, that I never find myself being burdened by them. If anything, I just wish it were made a little clearer where each of them will take you. Sometimes I'd try to get on top of a hill using one of these, and it would end up sending me in the complete opposite direction. Which again is fine and all when I still feel like I'm being rewarded for them with memory tokens and whatnot. But when I'm near the end of collecting everything in an island, and these same collectibles basically become worthless, it gets on my nerves more and more that I'll be running to the emerald, only to get sent off on a different route from an automated dash panel I couldn't see. The third one, Chaos Island, is especially guilty of this, mainly because a lot of the time you're sent off into a 2D section that you're unable to break freely from, meaning I now have to manage to find a way to get off the track or just say fuck it and run through it again. To repeat, on your first time in these places, it's not a big deal. I loved that I find myself getting sidetracked a lot. It means I actually wanted to see what was going on in the different areas. But the more you play and the less you need to do these sections, it's only further highlighted how intrusive and not very fun they are. Mostly because I feel none of them do a particularly standout job at utilizing Sonic's diverse moveset here. One of the biggest factors that would make or break Frontiers was how Sonic controlled. The initial 3D games give you a Sonic that was very loose. He made quick turns, had a floaty jump that allowed you to correct yourself while platforming. But with the release of Unleashed, we saw them lean way more into a tighter Sonic. He turned much slower, which helped for those games, as they were all about going in a straight line with precise movements, rectifying a big complaint with the adventure games being how unruly Sonic could be, struggling to stay in said straight line. The best way I could describe Frontiers is that it's stuck between these two different styles. Throw in a bit of Lost World with the way his running speed is really slow, but then boosting is basically like the run button in that game. Sonic's grind controls feels much more akin to adventure, which I love. There's this helpful feature in the options menu where you can slightly adjust different attributes for him, such as his turning speed, bounce height, and so on. And I had all that shit cranked up to the max. I love me a sensitive controlling Sonic. But things start to get less fun when you realize that the jump pretty much kills all your momentum. I don't mind them bringing back the boost for this, as especially when you get the unlimited effect from 400 rings, it's pretty exhilarating to see just how fast you can go without hitting anything. But even Generations on Unleashed had slight momentum when you jump after a boost. You carry that speed somewhat, which helps you reach greater heights or go further than you would usually, especially doing so at the top of a ramp. Not to mention, it just fucking feels good. But in Frontiers, it's been made way less noticeable, and it results in so many moments where I'm having a fun time running around and doing tricks off ramps, only to stop in my tracks the second I jump. You're better off not jumping at all, because at least that carries your speed and launches you forward, which is really cool to pull off. When Sonic isn't sticking to the floor, that is. Sonic's collision is terrible in this game. He's got super glue stuck to his feet and sticks to most surfaces he's on, which makes it so I'll try to launch Sonic off the edge of a cliff so I can shoot towards the horizon, only for him to nosedive straight to the ground. I hate it. It's like these two control schemes are constantly fighting against each other, which is shit because I think there's objectively a better option here, and it's that the game needs some sort of momentum set for Sonic's air controls. Now, that's not to say there's none, and I'm not saying I want it in a way that results in them needing to rework the whole game. But I think the most fun move to pull off here is the drop dash added from Sonic Mania, where Sonic instantly spin dashes when he reaches the ground. This move is genuinely the most fun I have running around these islands, and even then, I can't fully enjoy it because you can't even boost out of it. You have to either wait for Sonic to slow down again or jump, which again, slows you down too. Guess I just can't have nice things. But if the game did a better job at flowing moves like that together, while still giving Sonic a little bit of momentum, you know, slowing down when running uphill and gaining speed when going downhill, which fans have already started modding in, I think I would safely call this the greatest Sonic has ever controlled in 3D. It's just not there yet. When you consider all this though, and how Sonic is so fun to control at times, I have to wonder who decided that boring, easy puzzles was the best way to go about the mission structure. Who needs rushing around lush and varied locales while dodging badniks and engaging with fun gimmicks, all while doing so in style, when you could be walking on panels, and playing Tetris, and walking on panels again. I gotta make it clear that this shit is optional. They're only for the purpose of letting you see more of the map to further help you see portals to cyberspace and Chaos Emeralds. But to avoid these is to skip past a large chunk of gameplay, and it's hard not to see these as basic busy work. The best way I could sum it up is that it's like playing Mario Odyssey, but only by obtaining the shitty moons. The ones like light this flame or jump rope. You know, the ones that aren't fun or engaging at all. Every mission in Sonic Frontiers is like that, except for maybe the time trials, I guess. I thought this was going to be exclusive to the first island. Like, oh, okay, they'll evolve these ideas as the game goes on. But nope. They do the exact same shit from start to finish. Parry one bullet. Great, I sure love holding down the shoulder buttons. Psyloop a flame. Oh boy, circling a non-moving target? I can't wait. Walk up to a pixie and press the square button. Oh, wonderful. Could have easily made this spirit thing a race like in Secret Rings, but no, I guess. And it's not like they're devoid of creative original ideas. In the first island, there's a segment where you have to press lights in order to create your own reel to get to the portal. And I couldn't wait to see how this progresses and gets more challenging as the game goes on. This is the only time the mission is used. I don't mind the idea of having puzzle elements in Sonic, but I still think they should cater to his abilities in some way, shape, or form. Mario can afford to do whatever the fuck it wants because the core idea is so flexible, but Sonic? Not so much. I can't even get this thrill through other means, since, again, all the little floating detours present in the islands are 9 times out of 10 entirely automated, and it's just not engaging. Sonic has this new climbing move, where if you press the run button while doing so, you can run on walls every which way. Like an expanded version of the parkour system in Sonic Lost World. But there is almost no moment in Sonic Frontiers where this is mandatory. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot of wall running platforms, but almost each and every one is preceded by a dash panel or a spring, making the scenario entirely automated. Trust me to make my own decisions, goddammit you! There were slight moments where I could see glimpses of what could have been, like in the third island where I found these massive structures that allowed you to run on them up and down, but when I got over there and was expecting to find some sort of reward for my curiosity, I met with a single spring to take me back to the mainland. Island 5 has this too. I found this little cave where you could run around the walls, even on the ceiling, which is a really fun mechanic to have, but it just exists here, there's nothing to do with it. There's so much wasted potential of Sonic's control scheme because they're more obsessed with copy-pasting the same 6 or 7 puzzles over and over again. Something we definitely needed more of was story-specific set pieces. There are these moments where your friends will want you to do something for them, but it's the most mindless shit ever. Cut grass with the Psyloop. Push Coco to the goal. Break boxes to get nuts and bolts. Exciting. These examples would be less egregious, but that's all there is. There's such little to do here. The only ones I found interesting at all were Sonic's first encounters with each island's respective Titan, where we play a short segment of them trying to attack you, whether it be homing attacking fallen rubble, running away and dodging its missiles, or running on the pathway created by another enemy to avoid the spinning saw blade it's throwing at you. All of these moments were wonderful additions, and I only wish there were more. Which, now that I think about it, is how I'd sum up the whole game in general. Yep, I'm going there. So, throughout the entire marketing of Frontiers, it was promoted as having 5 Starfall Islands to explore. And while that is technically true, I quickly realized while playing why SEGA were so afraid of specifying what the final 2 islands looked like. When I saw that island transition screen, my heart sank. No, there's no way. This seriously couldn't just be reusing the same aesthetics from the first one to save time and money on resources, could they? Then I remembered this was the same Sonic Team who split colors up into 6 acts, the last few consisting of originally optional missions that they made mandatory to extend playtime. Oh no. Things got worse when folks went into the files for the game and saw that Island 4 and 5 were both named after the first one, meaning that in a last attempt to make the game seem longer, I can only assume, Sonic Team took the originally massive Kronos Island, split it up into 3, and called it a day. I was wondering why I could see Island 4 just out of my reach beyond the waterfall. I was originally supposed to be able to go there right away. Even then, saying there's 5 islands to explore is a stretch, considering the entirety of the 4th one solely consists of climbing 6 towers in order to get a cutscene so you can move on to the next tower. Really, there's only 4 full islands here, 2 of which have the exact same aesthetic. It's so shameless that when you look at the map, you can literally see where they cut it in half. Same design and everything. Again, it's shameless. I was really hoping for some different worlds to explore here, because grass, desert, and volcano worlds are not what I want to see in my Sonic game. Where are the cities, the casinos, hell, no mechanical stage? I don't know, other than the ancient ruins, these worlds just look boring. If you want my opinion, I think Sonic Team should have shrunk all the islands here. It's not like there's even much to do beyond the 5-second baby missions. I think instead of having 4 islands that take around 3 to 4 hours to complete, there should have been like 7 that took 2 to 3, not reusing any fucking designs. It makes returning to these places hard after beating it because there's nothing interesting to look at and there's nothing to do. I could go back and fish with Big, that was something I was excited to see return, but it appears that SEGA were so afraid to create a fishing minigame that came off as annoying like in Sonic Adventure, that they went out of their way to make it as simple as possible. You press X, then you press X again, and then you press X again. Oh boy, I'm having the time of my life. I know it's meant to be optional and more of a relaxing change of pace where you can cool down, but I still think I should be engaged in some way. Because especially in the last island, they make it way too easy to get a fuck ton of tokens from fishing, and now I can buy a large chunk of the materials I need to get to the end. Where's the fun in that? Where's the cosmetics? At least then there's the replayability and me wanting to unlock a bunch of different outfits for Sonic. The soap shoes are here, which I can only get by signing up for a SEGA newsletter. Fuck yeah, this is my favorite part of the game. This was such a missed opportunity. Where's the adventure skin, the rider's outfit, his Black Knight gauntlet? For a game so obsessed with referencing Sonic's past, you'd think they'd want to show more and not just tell. There was even the perfect place to put this store. Put it in the big Eggman ship that's on the islands, instead of just being there for nothing. The only other thing to do here is fight the plethora of new enemies the game features, with their brand new combat system. My big worry about the combat going in is that it would be an incredibly bare-bones feature where you're given a bunch of pointless combos that are nowhere near as useful as spamming the punch button. But I'm happy to say that the combat in fact features a bunch of completely broken mechanics that as a result makes the combat not challenging in the slightest. There are some enemies that require certain moves to take them down. I think the best ones are the ninjas, honestly. But a majority of the regular enemies are just a case of holding down a single button and watching the movie play. There's not much strategy beyond knowing when to dodge. There's this one in Ares Island, where if it catches you, it'll steal your Chaos Emeralds, kinda like the bird from Mario 64 who takes your hat. And I wish there were more enemies like that, ones that would just surprise me, you know? The Guardians are a little more involved, who you have to fight to get the portal gears, but even then they're very hit or miss. Some of them can be quite fun, such as the Spider in Chaos Island, whom you have to side-loop the legs of, for it to shoot you up in the air, in which you need to skydive through some hoops, so you can damage its shield, finally being able to attack it. Or the Sumo, where you ricochet off the ring to whack it into an electrical gate. But then there are fights like Azura, where you climb up its legs using these near-broken boost rings that fling you every which way. Or Strider, where you're just on automatic grind rails before it takes you towards its weak point. There are so many Guardians here that look like they should be so much cooler, like Squid in Fortress, where the whole thing just consists of running or grinding towards it, avoiding the occasional attack, and then wheeling on the fucking thing. There's no effort in this, why can't I be challenged at all? After I got all the portal gears, I had no desire to fight any of these guys again, and actively avoided them. Which sure is fun when each of them takes focus of the camera away from you for a while until you run away from them. Like I said before though, these portal gears get you access to the cyberspace levels, which as predicted, are easily the worst part of the game. It's so weird because I've often seen non-active Sonic players call these the best parts, and I can't help but assume that I only hate them so much because of how much of a downgrade it is to other boost formula Sonic games. Forces controls way better, that is no exaggeration. Dude, sit one of these guys down with Generations for an afternoon, it'd blow their fucking mind. The most obvious flaw of cyberspace is how lacking it is in regards to level variety. There's around 30 stages total, all consisting of the same 4 themes, 3 of which have been used ad nauseum in the past decade. Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary. The 4th is nothing more than a boring city with gun tanks and helicopters for some reason. What's worse is that almost all the level design is ripped from Sonic Adventure 2, Generations, and Unleashed. They give some bullshit explanation for why this happens, saying that cyberspace is ripping from Sonic's memories, which is how he was able to escape them so easily, you know, he's running around familiar ground. But that excuse gets thrown out the fucking window when you see there are certain levels that are completely original. What's the reason now, Sega? Now, I'm not opposed to reusing content. I get why it has to be done, but I'm not okay at all with how lazily it's done here, literally just ripping the assets. Sonic Frontiers is alright and all, but why was the game interrupted with a 30-minute QTE of Sonic taking a shit? Because Sonic ate a chili dog earlier in the story, there's a reason for it! People are just looking to complain, God! If you ask me, I think a much more creative approach to this idea could have been done. How about take a bunch of Sonic assets from every game? Sonic Team could even do this thing they appear to be allergic to and make new assets for levels not previously seen in 3D. And how about you mishmash them all together? Seems like it would fit better for Sonic's corrupted cyberspace. What if instead of just Green Hill Zone again, I'm running around a weird combination of entirely different stages aesthetically? Have a casino stage combining with fuck, Forces did that. Have you up in the sky in Flying Battery, before going down a water slide from Water Palace that takes you to the ground, which is covered with elements from Music Plant from Sonic Advance 2. All while fighting badniks from Sonic 06 or some shit. I don't know, that's just off the top of my head, but you know what I mean, right? If you're gonna do this shit I've seen before, at least try to surprise me with it, like Sonic Mania. And what's even worse is how abysmally these controls are for Sonic. This open world control scheme was not built for linear hallways, and so trying to make it fit results in one of the worst controlling Sonics I think in the entire series. Every issue with open world Sonic is present here, but since these were levels that initially relied on a character who played much better, his issues become 100% more prevalent. The sidestep goes too far, the jump halts all your momentum, the light dash and springs are incredibly slow. It's not fun. Unsurprisingly, the best cyberspace stages are the ones that don't rip their level design from previous games. It's almost like they're built around the shitway he controls, which is better than the alternative at the very least. The only remotely fun thing about cyberspace is the added missions you have to complete to get the extra keys, being getting all 5 red rings, beating the stage with a certain amount of rings, and the toughest one, getting the goal fast enough to get an S rank. Which is only fun because you have to learn how to work around the jank, more often than not trying to actively avoid the automated segments like springs and dash rings. And the red rings are piss easy. Remember when these things were kinda tough to get in Colors and Generations? Here they just give them to you half the time, like in 2-4 where the stage ends by just throwing you into 2 of them. Yeah, that was tough. All in all, cyberspace is terrible. I don't know why they boast so much about wanting to evolve the Sonic series while still relying on stuff from the past. And doing it worse, might I reiterate. That one random stage where you can suddenly drift from Sonic Unleashed to the fuck off. And given the fact this is the best way to get the keys for the Chaos Emeralds, it's safe to assume Sega thought this was the meat of the game, the big reward for the Portal Gears, and I'm sorry, just no. The last thing I want to discuss with the gameplay, of course, would be the boss fights, where Sonic collects the last of the Chaos Emeralds and becomes Super Sonic, for the first time in the series tackling every single boss in this form. I was happy to see that he was pretty much just a more powerful version of regular Sonic, meaning you don't have to learn some new control scheme or whatever. And visually, they're great. But in terms of gameplay, it's pretty easy, and I have to guess they're only seen as the highlight of the game due to the spectacle. They're pure style over substance. It's just a case of endlessly wheeling on the thing, and parrying when necessary, which at first I find tough, trying to perfectly time when I need to press the buttons, but then I find out that Sonic holds his parry infinitely like a shield, meaning anytime you think he's gonna attack, hold the shoulder buttons and wait for him to hit you. No strategy at all. Also, Wild Rush, where you just press one of the shoulder buttons and then the attack button for Sonic to fling around the screen and hit it, does the most damage for some reason. Just keep spamming that, that's what I did. Nothing had me more disappointed though than the final boss. The first 3 are easy but fun. The last one is fucking terrible in my opinion. It mostly upsets me because they hype this shit up. Not only is this supposedly stronger than the previous Titans, but Siege is constantly telling you how futile fighting this thing is gonna be. I did it on my first try in like 2 minutes. I genuinely thought it was so bad and easy that it was a fake out, that there was some second phase coming. And when Siege takes control of it and they shoot off into space to fight the end, I thought this was when the real boss fight was beginning. I had to press square 3 times. And with that, the boss is defeated. If you're playing on normal mode. Yep, apparently by playing on the hard difficulty setting, you get an extra phase to this fight. Oh boy, here we go. Time to see what it's fucking Galaga! Earlier in the game, there's these hacking games you have to do a couple times as a part of those extra story missions like I was saying. You know, the collecting nuts and bolts or a pinball machine. But I could not fathom that this minigame was basically going to be retextured and used as the final fight. Which is tough, genuinely. Takes a lot of hits and took me like 20 minutes to get through. But it wasn't fun, and most importantly, it wasn't Sonic. What doesn't help is that throughout the whole thing, the end, who is definitely not voiced by Amy's voice actress, keeps telling you how Sonic has fought mechs and gods in the past, but none of that compares to it. While I'm playing a bloody shoot-em-up who thought this would be a satisfactory ending. Whatever. After the game ends, there's really nothing to go back to. I could play the rest of those shitty 5-second missions, or I could go outside. I can level up Sonic, I guess. Throughout your adventure, you get a bunch of blue and red seeds that power your attack and defense. Or if you collect enough cocoa, you can upgrade your speed and ring count. And for some bizarre reason, the attack and defense are all upgraded in one go. For example, if I have enough to go up 5 levels, it'll just do it automatically all at once. But this fucking old dipshit right here requires you to upgrade 1 at a time for your rings and speed. Which, if you're like me and chose to do this by the end of your adventure, you are going to be sitting for literally 30 fucking minutes standing here and pressing the X button. Which is no different from the 45 minutes you have to spend mashing the X button to complete the big fishing. That's what I get for replayability? Fuck that. If you want to play more Frontiers, you're better off just starting a new save file and going from the beginning again. It's more fun. If I can get back to positives for a bit after discussing all the gameplay, I want to say that in terms of graphics and presentation, I was very impressed with how good Frontiers looks visually. Although much like the rest of the game, it's not without its glaring issues. Graphically, I think it's a pleasure to look at. Up there with Unleashed for best looking Sonic game. I think what might give that one the edge, though, is the better art design. Frontiers looks so flat and boring. I really don't think these realistic locations work well for Sonic. The problem isn't even that they're realistic. That's worked well in the past, in my opinion. But there's just simply nothing at all interesting being done here, beyond the tech of the ancients, I guess. There are these cool spiraling structures in the sky, but that's really the highlight. I can't think of another area that had my jaw drop to the floor in amazement. At least in other realistic games like Adventure 2 or 06, they're taking inspiration from real-life locations to make it more interesting, like Europe in Sonic 06 or San Francisco in Sonic Adventure 2. Which is a real shame because, again, on a technical level, Frontiers looks great. The day and night cycle is an amazing addition to finally see implemented in a Sonic game. I especially love how areas like Kronos and Ares Island look when the sun is rising. It does a good job at keeping things visually interesting, even just by a simple change in the day. One thing most can agree on is the abysmal pop-in. It is next level bad. There are times where you can come right up to something only to have it pop in right in front of you. Which isn't a good thing in a game all about fast reaction times and planning your routes across vast open areas. How the fuck am I to know where I'm going if I can't even see it yet? I remember when the game was first shown off and people brought up this issue. It's just an alpha build. The final game will fix it, obviously. Don't bother complaining about this shit. Well, here we are. The game is out and it's not fixed. Suddenly, the method of coping is, well, other games have pop-in too. How does that at all excuse Frontiers? Especially when it easily has it miles worse than the examples used to defend this. Another facet of praise comes from the animation, which I'm really happy to see has seen a slight step up from Forces. It's nowhere near where I want it to be. I still think Crash 4 or Ratchet & Clank should be the standard these days for cartoony platforming mascot animation quality, but for what it is, there are a few good moments in here, like Sonic's many conversations with Knuckles or when he's teasing Eggman. I definitely wish all the cutscenes received this treatment, because a majority of them, mainly being the extra ones you see from using your memory tokens on a character, are simply just them standing idly and flapping their mouths, sometimes completely lacking any sort of lip sync.
I searched everywhere I could. I'm out of ideas.
So where is it? Maybe.
Another thing that got on my nerves was how goddamn slow the pacing was in a lot of these cutscenes. There are seconds and seconds between dialogue and actions where nothing is being done or said. Everyone is just blankly waiting around for the next character to read their line, and it makes me more often than not just want to skip the fucking things. But again, it's a step up, which is better than nothing, I guess. That's what we've been reduced to. I was not digging the music at all, though, I have to sadly say. In the open zones, they're fine and fit while playing, but leave my head the moment I'm not in that area. The cyberspace EDM shit just isn't my thing, and the fucking screamo boss fight music also just noise to me. Music is subjective and all, I know. Just wanted to get it out there. And with that, we've covered just about all the major things I've had to say about Sonic Frontiers. I hear they want to do DLC at some point in the future. Who knows what that entails, probably something cheap. But Sega, if you want my idea, you can have it for free. Make it so you can play through the entire campaign as Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. You can leave out the story, I know that would be a nightmare to redo for each of them. But the only real time that the game utilizes Sonic's moves is during those automated detours, which are just floating in the sky using the same 3 or 4 assets. So how about you keep the base of each island the same, which already cuts out a lot of work, and just make new little detour stuff that plays into the other characters' movesets. Easy work and easy money from Sonic fans who just want more Sonic no matter what. That's not an insult, I'm one of them. Ultimately though, would I recommend Sonic Frontiers for $60? It depends. If you already like Sonic, then yeah, this will most likely please you. But if you've never experienced the series before and aren't sure if this one's for you or not, I'd honestly wait for a price drop. Views have been so mixed already that it's not a guarantee you'll like it. But in my opinion, I think Sonic Frontiers is a good step in the right direction for the series. Although that's both a positive and a negative thing. Positive because I can't wait to see how they expand upon this idea in the future, and iron out all the stuff that just didn't work here, making a game that feels like it's fully realized its true potential. And the game itself can be a lot of fun. But negative because, you know, I didn't wait half a decade for this could someday be great. Laying a solid groundwork is nice and all, but that doesn't translate to Frontiers getting a free pass. We waited 5 years for this, plain and simple. And with the lackluster missions, lack of replayability, and shameless reuse of assets to make the game feel long enough to be considered AAA, I can't help but think this isn't a game that reflects a completed development cycle. It feels like there's more here under the surface that they didn't have the time or money to bring to light. And it sucks because I see it, I really do. Brings me back to the start of the video, wondering if Sega are truly focusing on quality over quantity. I mean, Frontiers' whole island structure is literally the antithesis of that, splitting one giant island into 3 for the sake of padding. Still though, like I said before, I'd rather a good game with potential to improve than a shitty game that I don't want to see revisited again. So I'd consider Frontiers a win overall. Now that the game has been released, we can cue the response from fans. And oh boy, is it just the same as every other recent 3D Sonic game. I feel like Sonic fans have been so battered and bruised over the years that it's made them hyper defensive. It's something I talked about over on my Sonic channel, Splash Dash. Also, if you're wondering why this video is on here and not there, it's mainly because I want to keep that channel for more general discussions and not necessarily reviews and such. So, go subscribe. But it's resulted in any time somebody voices their opinion or concern on the franchise, the fan bias, only a loud minority I'm aware, will fucking ravage that person for just giving their opinion online. People seriously have started treating SEGA and Sonic Team like they're little babies who need to be coddled about everything. You're paying $60 for this game, it's fine to be critical. Oh, the game has terrible pop-in? Well, don't worry, other games have it too, you'll get it right the next time. The goalposts get moved more and more to the point where the argument isn't even about your opinion at a certain point, and more about your right to even say it. I get it, I used to be like that too. I know it's not a nice feeling to have your favorite thing be slammed for reasons you deem unfair, and I'm all for correcting people when they're wrong, but I did not know what a digital trans was until they released their Sonic Frontiers review, and I think that highlights how counterproductive it is to give so much attention to these critics. Enjoy the game. If you like it, I'm glad. I enjoyed it too. Despite the mixed critical response, general audiences are appearing to have loved Frontiers, so it should sell really well over word of mouth alone. But you can't say that Frontiers is a good game because it's gotten all these good reviews, but then when someone says they don't like it, you claim that reviews don't even matter. It doesn't work like that. The cycle for Frontiers has been painful to say the least. I think this whole hype culture around it sort of hurt it in the end, not helped it. People praised every little thing, no matter how trivial, and set expectations for this to be a 10 out of 10. And when it came out and wasn't, I think a lot of folks didn't want to see that. It's that thing where they show Supersonic and it's like, oh my god guys, it's Supersonic, holy shit, this is awesome! Without even considering how he plays or, what the fuck, they referenced this thing I know? Without stopping to question if it's actually in service of anything. I know a lot of people don't want to view media like this, and that's fair, although sometimes it does come off like engagement farming, like how many tweets there have been about Sonic fans eating so good, while mostly showing media that wasn't even out yet, so we don't even know if said things were gonna be anything special. Because I think for a lot of people, that quality doesn't matter. Sonic fans just simply want to have more Sonic, and as long as his face is slapped on it, that's good enough. And honestly, do that. Again, that's fine. I just wish we could get to a point where both of these ideas can coexist, where someone can be both critical about a thing, while at the same time being excited over all these little things. And they're not called either a nitpicking loser or a corporate shill for having that view. I don't know, just food for thought. I used to be like this. I would freak out about every little thing this series had to offer, and engage in the same conversations day after day on Twitter. And I think at this point I'm just sort of done with it. Sonic still means a lot to me. I'm gonna keep up with the series, collect the merch, make videos about it, actively follow it. I'm still a fan. But maybe next game I'll take a less involved approach until it's out. Because the past year has been tiring, and I think the older I get, the more pointless it all feels to me to stand by a fictional character so much. I got adult shit to do, like watching Big Mouth. Ultimately though, Frontiers at least makes me hopeful for the future of Sonic. The time has been spent making a Sonic that's fun to control in 3D. And now that that's finally done, maybe next game, they can spend that development time giving me actually fun things to do with those controls, that aren't reliant on automation or stop-and-go puzzles. I'm especially excited to see what modders are going to do with this thing. They've already fixed a lot of the physics problems, added in characters. I wonder how long till people take the Green Hill assets and try to create a giant open world with it using Sonic aesthetics. That'd be cool. Sonic Frontiers leaves me wanting more, and I guess I can only really see that as a good thing.